We are speeding towards New Comic Book Day once again. So let's take a look at the books coming out so I can tell you what's on my pull list. Welcome back to Comics Are Dope. I'm BJ Kicks, and this is the pull list. It's my weekly video where I take a look at all the comics coming out. I tell you what's on my pull list, what's on the chopping block, and what's on the maybe list I'm making a game day decision on. This week, Wednesday, March 29th, 2022, is actually a light week for me, which is much welcome because last week I was over budget a little bit. Week before that was fairly light as well, though. But anyway, getting all out of the nitty gritty, right? I'm excited about this week's slate of books. It's a light week, but a good week. But there are plenty of titles that I'm going to be grabbing. None that I'm more excited for than this. Action Comics 1053 from DC Comics, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, at least the main story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. So we have been getting this Superman versus Metallo arc. It's been a slow build throughout this arc, but the stakes really sort of ramped up in the last issue. What we found is that Superman basically brought these refugees from Warworld, and there's like this sort of uprising, this hidden uprising of people who don't believe these refugees should be allowed to live on Earth. So they're kind of rebelling and plotting. And Metallo appears, he's about to like take full advantage of this sort of militia that's rising up. So like I said, the stakes are just getting that much higher. And these two, superpowered teenagers or kids are now the target of the ire of the community. And so Superman's family's in the crosshairs of attackers. And Superman's got to jump in to save the day. It's going to be a good issue. It's been a very exciting story arc. Philip Kennedy Johnson's Action Comics has been great from Warworld all the way up through now. And I'm very excited for this issue. If you couldn't tell, I'm even going to, bear through the two backup stories just because of it, right? This is also going to be the first appearance of the Necro Hive. I don't know what the Necro Hive is, but we're going to find out tomorrow. So Action Comics 1053 out Tuesday from DC Comics with a cover price of $4.99. I'm grabbing cover A. And since we're talking about DC Comics, there's two more DC books on the pull list this week. The first is from Tom Taylor, Dark Knights of Steel, issue number 10. Dark Knights of Steel started off really, really strong. It's everything you would expect from a Tom Taylor Elseworlds. It's basically the DC universe with like a sort of Game of Thrones skin over it. And through 9 issues, it's been great, but I can't lie. I feel like it's losing steam in the latter half just because the issues aren't coming out consistently every month. It's a little bit harder for me to remember what happened issue to issue, even though I remember being excited about it when I read it. I think it's going to read a lot better in trade just because of that. But either way, definitely a solid series. Definitely solid. So what I've got in my notes is that it's losing steam, but it's still good. It's really the release schedule, not necessarily the quality of the story to me. But Dark Knights of Steel issue 10's got a cover price of $3.99. And this cover A might be my favorite of the whole series so far. Definitely grabbing that one. And the last book on my DC Comics pull list this week from Ram V is Detective Comics issue 1070. So I told you guys last week, I'm finally starting to get caught up on Detective Comics. I've been binging it. I say binging, like that implies that I read it all at one time. But no, when I find leisure time, I'm sitting on my iPad reading Detective Comics. It's a slower burn. It's definitely like a more layered story. It's not like the big sprawling superhero action. It's definitely like a more understated, slow build, mystery, intriguing story with supernatural elements, but it's really good so far. I'm only on issue, 1065-ish. So I got a little ways to go before I catch up, but I'm enjoying it so far. Dark Knights of Steel Detective Comics issue 1070 has a cover price of $4.99. I'm grabbing cover A. And that's it for the DC books on the pull list. So assuming I just stick to the list, those books are going to cost me $14 when I go to the shop Wednesday. Now let's move on to the House of Ideas over at Marvel Comics. I've got one book on the pull list, and that is Daredevil, issue number 9. So we had been slowly building toward this fight between Daredevil and the Punisher, the greater fight between the fist and the hand. And, that sort of came to like a sort of climax point in the last issue. I can't lie, like I remember being excited by it, but it definitely feels like we're about to be into falling action. And I don't know. I just remember feeling like it could have been a bit more exciting than it was to me. But Chip Zdarsky's like basically closing out his run on Daredevil. They've already announced like what the final story arc will be later on this year. I'm excited to see how it concludes, but I think it's going to read better for me if I go back and read the original Zdarsky Daredevil and not just from the renumbering. But anyway, issue 9 of this Daredevil run. It's been a great run. Nice, meaty comic book with amazing artwork. But issue 9's got a cover price of $3.99. I'm grabbing cover A. And that's the only Marvel book on the pull list. So my Marvel books will cost me $4 at the shop this week. Now let's move on to the indies, where there are 2 indie comics on the list this week. The first is a series debut from Image Comics and Mark Millar. This is The Ambassadors #1. I don't know if it's Mark Millar or Mark Miller. I've heard it both ways, but anyway, this is Mark Millar with a bunch of different artists. So the first artist is going to be Frank Quitely, but each issue has a different artist on the series. The premise of the series is basically like, out of the whole world's population, only I think 6 people can get superpowers. And so in each issue, you've got a different character sort of making their case as to why they should be the one to get the powers. So the only reason I'm really grabbing this is because issue 4 is going to be penciled by Olivier Coipel. Should I just grab issue 4 since that's the one I'm interested in? Maybe, but I'm intrigued by the concept, so I decided to pull the whole series. So The Ambassadors issue 1's got a cover price of $3.99, and I'm grabbing cover A. And the last book on my pull list this week is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Volume 2, issue number 4. That's a mouthful, but this series has been fun. This series is basically everything that you might remember the original Power Rangers Ninja Turtle series to be. It was fun, like just a cool reason for these characters to interact with each other, nice bits of nostalgia, and there's not like a ton going on to where you need to like know leaps and bounds of continuity and all that, right? Like, both Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles have ongoing series right now that are well over 100 issues. Like in the case of Ninja Turtles, we're almost at like 140. Power Rangers are at 106. And if you are a fan of either of those franchises and you're looking for a place to jump in, you probably don't want to jump into those ongoings because there's so many plot threads that you're just not going to pick up on unless you decide to go back from issue 1. But if you want a great series that captures the spirit of both franchises, gives you a compelling story, and really, really great artwork from Dan Mora, this is the series for you. Grab Power Turtles is what I'm calling it. It's got a cover price for this week of $4.99, and I'm actually not grabbing this cover A by Dan Mora. I have been grabbing the Torrin Clark variants because Torrin Clark is one of my favorite up-and-coming cover. I guess he's not up-and-coming anymore. Like he's already come up. He's doing covers for like everybody. But anyway, I'm grabbing that cover. I think it's cover C. But I'm grabbing the Torrin Clark cover with Michelangelo and the Yellow Ranger. Cool. So that's it for the indie books on my pull list. If I stick to the list, those will cost me $9, which means my grand total for the week is a nice, modest $27. Now, in the weeks moving ahead, I'm going to be trying to pare my pull list down a little bit, cut the budget down. I normally work with a budget of about $50. I think I'm going to try to get that down to somewhere between 30 and 40 in the months ahead. I can tell you next week is going to be a challenge to do that. But as the month of April goes on, we're going to start to see some titles get cut. So if you're looking to see what gets put on the chopping block, stay tuned. By the way, recent happenings, we started a podcast. So the Comics Are Dope podcast is available on basically all streaming platforms right now. So if you want to listen to the first 4 episodes, they are live on iTunes, Spotify. You can use the link in the description down below to listen to it. And then also make sure you subscribe to the newsletter This Week in Comics so that you can get my recommendations every single week for what books I read that I thought were good, as well as books coming up on final order cutoff that you should probably pre-order. So before I wrap up, got to give a huge shout out to all the channel members, the people that make content on Comics Are Dope possible. Couldn't do it without you, quite literally. So thank you all. And I'll see you guys in another review video real soon. Until then, be safe, be well, and make sure you read something dope today. Peace.